So we will have a very lively and interesting and thought-provoking session, and where I also hope we will get results, because it's extremely important that we see how we go forward. And I heard this morning in the opening a lot of good comments and remarks from the leaders in this country. So His Excellency Suhail Al-Mazrouei, Ministry of Energy and Industries, he said that we, as a whole, are delivering the solutions for the future, and that UAE is calling for 50% clean future, clean energy future, and doing that with renewables and nuclear together. So I think that is specifically an introduction and remark to us. And then also the chair of the World Energy Council, Jong David Kim, he also said, he talked about the newcomers when he meant the new technologies and the new different disruptive technologies. Sometimes I do see nuclear being that, a very new technology, very dynamic, very smart, on which we build the fourth industrial revolution. So I do see nuclear energy as a trailblazer, because what we have to do is to be available at the right time, affordable at the right price, and also appropriate and appreciated. So I think he mentioned these type of keywords, which I think fits very well for nuclear. I also wanted to mention a few words around the organization which I'm representing, and a few words about the development in nuclear right now. And especially, of course, all of us here, we welcome the central role of nuclear energy. But this will be discussed here at the heart of the World Energy Congress, which only takes place every third year. And we are so absolutely happy to be in UAE to do this. I wanted in the beginning to say that in our booth, I'd say it first because my staff will tell me you forgot to say it otherwise. 1:15 in our booth, the World Nuclear Association, we will launch the report, The Silent Giant, and also we will have the executive summary of the report we have been working with and given input to for the World Energy Council. So this is the World Scenarios Executive Summary of the Future of Nuclear. So this is advertising soon over. Thank you. So I will go further here to my comments. Nuclear energy, complemented by other low-carbon sources, must play a central role if we want to shift to a clean, affordable, and reliable electricity system. Nuclear power directly contributes to the Sustainable Development Goal 7, affordable and clean energy, and 13, climate action. And thanks to its low-carbon credentials, the global nuclear industry has set itself the ambitious target to construct additional 1,000 gigawatt of reactors before 2050 to get to 25% of electricity share. And this is to ensure that we can deliver this, we need to, in fact, remove some barriers, which we are going to discuss here today, how we move forward. But we need all this electricity because we have a high-powered lifestyle, and we want more people to be able to have that as well for the prosperity and also the fourth industrial revolution. And beyond energy and climate action, the use of nuclear energy and technologies contributes to the majority of the development goals. Nuclear energy can be used for desalination, ensure a secure supply of fresh drinking water. Thanks to its small environmental footprint, nuclear leaves more space for nature to thrive. It prevents many thousands of air pollution deaths every year by displacing dirty fossil-fueled power plants. And radionuclides, this is my expert area, radionuclides produced in reactors are used to treat illnesses and prevent foodborne diseases and food spoilage. So we will have today a very interesting discussion with these panelists. I will absolutely open to the floor for questions as well. And you will not be sitting there so calm and silently after a little while. So I think I will leave there my introduction because I'm more curious to hear what our panelists will say. But I like to start with a polling question to the audience. Can we please get the question up, or at least the alternatives? You see if it will be working. It's soon there, but you can think of the question in the meantime, because what we do is, of course, we want to have a new dawn for nuclear. We want nuclear to thrive, and we want nuclear energy to play its full role in supporting people's health, to support the environment, and also to combat climate change. So you'll see how it's working. I'm going slowly forward here. So the question for the audience would be, what would be the most effective way to enable more nuclear generation? So in which way should we enable more nuclear generation? Are you now thinking, I came here to listen, not to answer questions, but now that's how we turn it around. We like you to answer some questions. Do you have the alternatives for answers ready? It's coming up. So you can only choose one of these alternatives, and I will ask you to raise your hand when you get a minute to think. Do you choose which one to enable nuclear? Improve project delivery to time and budget, that is number one. Carbon budgets to recognize nuclear's carbon-free generation, that's number two. 3 is to strengthen regulatory harmonization between national nuclear regulators. 4, improve public understanding and acceptance of nuclear energy. And 5 is to unlock green financing for nuclear investment. So I have some people who will count. So now I'd like to know who think number 1 is the way to enable more nuclear generation. Hands up, please. Are you counting? Ready? Thank you. We go for the next one. Carbon budgets to recognize nuclear's carbon-free generation. Number 2. Who vote for that? Thank you. Number 3. Strengthen the regulatory harmonization between national nuclear regulators. Number 3. Who vote for that? Thank you.
We will have a very high score on the 5th.
Number 4, improve public understanding and acceptance of nuclear energy. Who's voting for that? You keep your hands up because they are counting. You are going to be counted. Thank you. Number 5, unlock green financing for nuclear investment. Thank you. Is there anyone who hasn't voted? Hands up. So you want to vote on something else? You can say that later on. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay. So we have for number 1, 6 votes. For number 2, 8 votes. For number 3, 7 votes. For number 4, 25 votes. And for number 5, 3 votes. And I guess there are a few abstentions. A few people haven't voted because I see there's more people in the room. Anyway, I now want to know, do you have any comments to this, Mr. Komarov?
Thank you very much, Agneta, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a big proud and big pleasure for me to speak in front of such a distinguished audience of World Energy Council Forum. And, if you allow me, Agneta, I will start with a question mark about new dawn for nuclear, and then I will come to answer your question because it will be more logically for me. I fully share the position that we do not have a question mark and shouldn't have a question mark in this sentence. But I can say even more. We have already not only bright and brilliant future, we have very good existing situation for nuclear. Let me remind you some figures. In 2018, it was one of the best years during last time period for many years, because it was commissioned 9 new nuclear units with total capacity of 10 gigawatt, plus to that 5 reactors with capacity of 5 gigawatts were restarted in Japan. Means altogether we have 15, let me say, more or less new nuclear capacity added to the whole installed capacity of nuclear, and it was very, very important. At the same time, it was launched 5 new projects. 3 of them were based on Russian design, and 55 nuclear power plants are in process of installation on different phases of installation due to the statistic of IAEA. Means we have a very good existence, we have a very big hope for the good future, and I also want to share with you some ideas what are the main challenges about our future. And I prepared a little bit shorter, Agneta, list of questions, not 5, but 3 of them. But as I looked at the voting, I see that I'm very close to what audience thinks about it. Because from my point of view, we have 3 areas where we need to increase trust to nuclear in a very substantial way. And first area is definitely public perceptions, because it's the first challenge, it may be the most important one. You can construct a brilliant nuclear power plant, you can do everything in time and in budget, you can use the most modern and reliable technologies, but if you do not convince people in the safeness of this nuclear power plant, if you do not convince them that to be able to find a solution for decarbonization program, we ultimately need to use nuclear, all of this will be useless. And I'm very optimistic about existing situation in the world, because we see more and more countries ready to join nuclear club. We see now that even countries who decided to withdraw from nuclear have now a lot of doubts about it. And even an example of Germany, it's very clear. In 2011, it was very, I think I can say, emotional solution to withdraw from nuclear. It was a strange solution because they stopped some part of nuclear power plants in Germany, but some part of nuclear power plants is still working. But the result is not good. They didn't achieve what they wanted because CO2 emission is still increasing. The prices for electricity are the highest in Europe, and they do not have a balanced system which works in a reliable, in a safe way. And I do not think that it's what they really wanted to achieve. That's why what is going now, it was really difficult to imagine even a year ago. Then in mass media, in German mass media, they have now time to time now public and open discussion about that maybe it was a mistake to withdraw from nuclear. And I think it's not a, public perception is not something which is definitely stable and cannot be changed. It depends a lot on our common work, on the work of the common nuclear society, to explain people what we are doing, to convince them, to provide arguments, to demonstrate that without nuclear to achieve a decarbonization goal, it's totally impossible. Second biggest challenge, and here I also share the view of the majority people in this hall, is our ability to execute projects in time and in budget, because it's one of the biggest concern for the public, for business, and including financial institutions. I think, Agneta, your 5th question, it's very connected with the 3rd one, because financial institutions are comfortable to provide money for nuclear projects if they see that everything goes well. And I have this, for this challenge, I know only one method to decide the problem. It's a serial construction, because if you do something first of a kind, you definitely face a lot of problems, and you even cannot expect what kind of problems you will see. But if you realize a serial construction, from one project to the next project, you are more and more self-convinced, and you can convince public, you can convince investors, you can convince banks, you can convince government that you are able to do this project because you know it already on the level of very, very deep and understandable details. In Rosatom, in last 14 years, we commissioned 15 nuclear power plants in Russia and abroad. And it gave us very good and strong understanding what we need to do to be able to continue this business and to convince people and to create trust to the ability to construct in time and in budget. And last but not least, also mentioned during the voting procedure, is that we need to find some reasonable compromise between to be ultimately safe, because safe, it's condition number 0 of everything what we are doing. At the same time, we shouldn't be, let me say, overloaded by different type of regulation, because it's not definitely a problem to satisfy some regulatory requirements. The biggest problem is that regulation is changing and changing very often unexpectedly in a temporary way. You are somewhere in the middle of realizing some project, and then you have some changes in legislation, and you need to attract these changes in your design. Means you need to stop all your work, we need to design something else, you need to go back to licensing agency. It's not an easy task. And I think the biggest solution can be some type, let's say, voluntary synchronization of regulatory requirements. It's not a matter what will be the base chosen for these requirements of International Atomic Energy Agency or some others on the base of VENRA or other association of regulator, but we need to synchronize regulatory base in different countries, and we need to make it as stable as possible. This will allow us to have, let's say, some sort of third type of trust from regulators, because they will know definitely well that what we are doing is safe and reliable. And if we find opportunity to answer all these 3 main issues, public acceptance, time and budget of our projects, and regulatory area, I think we can have even more brightened future that we have now in our goals, in the Harmony goals made of World Nuclear Association, as Agneta mentioned, to construct 1,000 gigawatt until 2050 and have a 25% of share of nuclear in the future energy balance of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will open later on to the floor, but I will first give all panelists the chance to talk. And now I move to Mr. Rosat.
Thank you very much. And it's also a pleasure for me to be there with my distinguished colleagues and have the occasion to exchange with you about the future of nuclear. As Kirill said, there shouldn't be any question mark in the sentence, a new dawn for nuclear, but there is. And there is because we have a lot of issues to deal with. And there shouldn't be any question mark because obviously the biggest fight we have again in front of us, and all of us in common on Earth, this is the fight against climate change. And at the time, we are not winning the battle. We have to face the reality. We are speaking about the battle. We are initiating a few actions, but we are not really winning the battle. And if we want to win the battle, we will need every mean of production of electricity that is relevant. We need to decarbonize our economies. And to decarbonize our economies, we need electricity, and we need low-carbon electricity. And there are 2 ways to produce low-carbon electricity, renewable and nuclear. And my first feeling is that never, if we are sincere in the fight against climate change, never we should put renewable against nuclear. This is renewable plus nuclear, or we will not win the fight. This is a very strong conviction from me. This is the conviction of my company, EDF, that you may know. that renewable and nuclear are very complement means of production of electricity, and that altogether they can bring electricity mix worldwide that are relevant to fight against climate change and bring safe, reliable, and stable, at a stable price electricity to everybody. Obviously, one issue is the public acceptance. I fully agree with you. It's not easy to speak about nuclear. You know, everybody can feel the wind on his face. Everybody can see that when there's water dropping down, it can produce electricity. Everybody can feel the sun on his face. But what is nuclear? Renewable is obvious. Nuclear is difficult to understand. This is the mysterious energy inside a plant producing a product that you cannot see. It's difficult. But we need to find a way to explain what nuclear is. We need to find a way to explain that this is an energy of the nature. This is not an energy invented by mankind. Nuclear is everywhere in nature, in the sun, on Earth, everywhere. This is not an invention from mankind. Mankind is using it in a relevant way. And I think that we have to work all together very carefully on the way we speak about nuclear. We have very brilliant explanation about nuclear, but explanation that most of the time needs to be a bachelor, to have a degree in physics or mathematics, and we do not speak to the heart of people, we speak to their brain. And we need to explain people, to the heart of people, what nuclear is and what the value nuclear can bring to them. In each territory, when there is a nuclear plant, in Russia, in France, in China, in the US, everywhere, there's a great value for the territory. There's a great value for the 20, 50, 100 kilometers around the power plant. We need to explain that. A lot of jobs, high-skilled people, the link with the health, the link with the research, the link with the future of humanity. And we have all together to think about that, and not only discuss around nuclear about the probability of a severe accident, or I don't know, or we will not succeed. A second point that is very important for me, after public acceptance, of course, is, I would say, the time to market. Of course, we need to deliver our project in time and on budget, and it's not always evident. But more important, I would say, or as important, is the fact that it's too long to develop a nuclear project. You know, you need, everybody knows, something like 4, 5, 6, 7 years to build the power plant. It depends on the model, it depends on the country, it depends on the sites, okay. This is difficult to strengthen. But before, most of the time, nuclear project takes 10, 15 years of development between the idea and the decision making. This is obviously too long. In the world where we are, we do not want to have the idea today for a new asset that will be live in 2035 or 2040. This is not anymore the world in which we are living. We are living in the world when we have an idea, we want it to now or quite soon. So we need to find together the solutions to shorten drastically the time we need to develop and take the decision around nuclear project. It goes through harmonization of the safety rules. It goes through concentrating on the core issues of safety and not overload the project with new ideas all the time. It's probably also a common vision for a nation of what a nuclear project is, what do we need to go through. Of course, it's always a very serious project, but serious doesn't mean that you need a decade to go through. You can do things seriously in a couple of months if we share the same vision. This topic is very important for me. And the third one is the regulatory skill and the financial scheme. I think that we need to embark private investor in nuclear. This is not always efficient. The question of the green financing is obviously key, but the question of the regulatory scheme around the asset, how the asset will sell the electricity during the first 20 years, for example, is key. If we want to fight against climate change, we need a stability in the political decision. We need a stability in the vision, so we can decide of a regulatory scheme that allows to develop a nuclear project in a fair way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your comments, and I think you open up for areas where there can be more discussion further on. So, Mr. Kim, it would be very nice to hear if you had any reflections on the voting or anything on how the development should move forward a little bit faster.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very pleased to be here talking with the colleagues who have a very long and distinguished career in nuclear business. And in front of a distinguished audience, I would particularly like to introduce Professor Dr. Jong-kap. He served former Science and Technology Minister in Korea, initiating all major nuclear projects in the country, probably much more outside the country as well. I'm honored to be speaking with you in front of the most distinguished scholar in the country. Well, regarding the huge challenges you have been presenting to us, I think all these 5 major challenges, I would say, should be adequately and sufficiently addressed for more nuclear power generation going forward. Well, I'm more or less in line with the voting result because I also think that the public acceptance is going to be critical in most modern societies, no question about it. But again, I'm saying that all these 5 major challenges have to be addressed sufficiently. And in regard to point 1, improve project delivery, as I've been working with Mr. Hammadi for some time now, and this is going to be one of very, very important issues that should be, effectively addressed. And in order to improve project delivery, time to market, if I borrow your language, government has to be very consistent in their energy policies, nuclear policy in particular. Government has to be very transparent for all approval processes. And at the same time, as I am consulting with your website, ENEC homepage, 94% of people are supporting nuclear business in this country, UAE. That percentage has risen from 5% back in 2011. It has been rising up to 94% as of last year. It's amazing. So as the government has been very, very transparent and consistent, we are able to expedite all these processes. And so in that regard, I do have every respect for UAE Abu Dhabi government in being very consistent and transparent, thereby winning big support from the people. Nuclear, in my view, in the short term, I think nuclear and gas-fired are going to constitute major base load. Therefore, we are going to compete with gas-fired in the short term. And the decision will depend on whether you are going to go for more environmentally friendly solutions or you are going to go for less costly solutions for your energy mix in the short term. But in the long term, you are saying that that's going to be nuclear plus renewables. Yes, in a sense, I do agree with you, but if renewables are going to be equipped with very effective low-cost energy storage system, then there are going to be tough competition. In order to win this game, I think development of fourth generation technologies are going to be pivotal in this nuclear sector, and fourth generation, which are going to be commercially more viable and much safer. Therefore, you could win the public acceptance. So this is my observation regarding short-term and long-term environment we are facing in the nuclear sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim, for your remarks and also some of the experience as you have coming in quite new in this area. It's very, very refreshing to hear your comments. Thank you very much. Mr. Gu, it would be very good to hear if you have some comments on the polling or on something else that have been said. What would you like to bring to the discussion?
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to attend the panel. At the beginning, I was recommended to speak Chinese, but because there are not so many earphones, so I was asked to request to try to speak English. Former panelists already gave quite a lot of good comments. I just took something about my experience in China about the nuclear industry development. For more than 30 years, we start from mainland of China. We start from 85, year 1985, the first 300 megawatt first concrete. Up to now, we have already 48, about 48 or 49 units in operation, and about 10 units still under construction. Within this more than 30 years' time, China have an ambitious program, a plan for the nuclear power plant. But after Fukushima, especially Fukushima accident, similar to the other country, we stopped for several years to construct a new power plant. But recent years, the government start the new plant again. By this year, we have already got approved 6 units to construct. So in China, I don't think think this mark is question mark is necessary. Also, we also have a new dawn. We're keeping the stable pace for the development of nuclear power project. But for these 5 questions, I think they are all important for more efficient, more nuclear power plants to be constructed. But in our, as I mentioned, after Fukushima accident, we have more and more difficult in public communication. Before Fukushima accident, people mainly they support nuclear power plant because the very big investment to the area, they can get benefit from the generation of power. But after Fukushima accident, especially the people, normal people, they can see through different media to see the effect of the accident. Also with the improper or incorrect information provided by the media that caused a lot of people a friend of nuclear energy, a friend of nuclear power plant. So-called not in my backyard effect is getting more and more serious now in China. The government make decision, they have to get acceptance from the local people, from the local government. So this problem is getting more and more difficult for us in China to find a new address, to build a new nuclear power plant. So we have to pay greater attention to the public communication and public acceptance. And also, it's very important for the government to make a decision. Otherwise, it's difficult for government official to make a decision to set up a nuclear power plant, new nuclear power plant. Another question is in China market, the competition for the electricity price is getting more and more serious. So market rise of the energy price is getting more and more. That's a challenge to the nuclear power plant also. I think we have to take care of very seriously. After Fukushima accident, of course, after Chernobyl, after 3 Mile Island, after Fukushima, after 3 accidents, the safety standards are keeping increased, lifted more and more high. A lot of regulatory requirements is getting more and more serious. That make the industry more difficult to control the cost, to control the construction time. That over budget, over time is getting more and more normal for all over the world. For example, for AP1000 plant, we have 4 units. That's Westinghouse technology. 4 units constructed in China. After 5 years delay, we put it into operation for the 4 units. But at the almost same time, 2.5 years later, started from United States. 4 units started construction, but they already abandoned to construct 2 units because several times over budget. So we think it's also very important to be affordable price for the user, for the customer. So I think these 2 points, I think from our experience in China, we think is more important for the new nuclear power plant to be built in China. I think similar in the world. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gu, for those insights from China and the challenges as well. And I'd like now to move over to Mr. Al-Hammadi. You are coming from the host country and, of course, also running a very well progressed new build project in Baraka. And we are, of course, curious to hear your remarks as well.
Thank you, Agneta. And first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to the UAE and also specifically to the capital Abu Dhabi. We're honored to have you here, and we are really privileged, to have this Congress here, and also to have this, distinguished panel, of colleagues of the nuclear industry all over the world, from China, Korea, France, and Russia, and we are. I'm personally very honored to be sitting, across in this panel. The question to the answer to the question, I would agree with the above, all of them, all areas, and what's also important, as Mr. Kim mentioned, is the clarity of policy and strategy, from government point of view. This is like the overarching and overriding, a driver for success. And then comes, the rest of the, of elements for getting a program up and running. And I will share the UAE story. In 2008, a policy paper had been published by government after a thorough evaluation of all the energy sources, looking at renewable, coal, oil and gas, you name it, to create a portfolio of energies that will create a resilience and sustainability of energy production for the nation. And nuclear came up as one of the safe, reliable, clean source of energy. And that policy was written, that was translated to a roadmap, explaining how we will do this in a very phased approach. That paper was published in 2008. We are today, 10 years later, And every element of that have been implemented in a very consistent and transparent manner to the public in the UAE and also to the global community. Everybody knows about our program at the IEA, at all even industrial forums. So that's a consistent policy and strategy from government that doesn't change every couple of years. At the same time, addressing the elements you mentioned in your answers. And also what's very, very important is the building a resilient and competent infrastructure within the nation. When I say infrastructure, it means legislation, human capital development, laws, regulations, even the supply chain. It's a very complex and a strong and consistent supply chain. That created, it took us years to develop with our partners from KEPCO, but it needs proper planning, it needs a foresight, it needs a clear vision. The mentioned managed by our colleague from EDF, the climate change is happening. It is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. For the UAE, when we complete our 4 units, we will have we'll avoid emissions of around 21 million tons of CO2 emissions on an annual basis. And that's a big footprint for the UAE from CO2 emissions point of view. Just put that in perspective, that's equivalent to around 3.2 million cars off the road. That's a significant change from an emissions for the country. Coupled with the 2,000 megawatts of renewable. So we are diversifying our energy in a very steady state, consistent manner, and we are tapping to every technology available. And to have oil and gas, nuclear, renewable, whatever sources available, it creates agility. You could change between nuclear, renewable, and whatever breakthrough in technologies. But nuclear technologies are proven, it is economically viable, it is safe, and it's clean. And this is proven in the last four decades of the operation and maintenance of the nuclear power plants. Countries are benefited from that, and UAE will be benefiting from this soon. My colleague from China, they are starting up 1 nuclear power plant roughly per year. And that's a major program that the government in China have been implemented and rolling out. Mr. Komarov spoke about Russia's also international buildup, and that's happening also in a consistent manner with our colleagues from Korea, our partners in developing the program in the UAE. So it is happening in the UAE, and we are very proud to tap into the nuclear energy. Climate change, as I said, it is happening and is a serious issue, need to be addressed. Nuclear is one of the key solutions in that equation when it comes to the base load, a massive level of energy production in a single source technology.
Thank you very much for your comments. And it's so good to see the experience you have gone through. And I also think in discussions I've had with you over the years is that, that is so common that everybody says, oh, public acceptance, that is why we cannot do more nuclear. But you have handled this in a good way all the time. And that is not the toughest part. It's not the hardest. It's something we can deal with. Certain things you cannot talk about, so it goes away. You cannot talk about climate change, and climate change goes away. You need to have real solutions. But public acceptance is something you can work on and achieve results. So what would you say were key things? You said consistency and following a plan, but then sometimes things happen abroad, in other countries, and you have to deal with something urgently. Was it something advice you have on this? How do you dealt with?
I will share, our real life scenarios we had. I'm not talking about future or planning. I'm talking about the history of the project. When we started the project in 2008, the financial crisis happened. So it means there's not much of available funds in the international market. Then after that, that was 2008. 2011, we had the Fukushima that most of my colleagues spoke about. We had that. I'm going to talk about each one of them in a second. Then we had another different challenges globally happening, not in our control. This is a global issues that we need to immediately react to it. Then when the financial crisis happened, the government came in full of support of the project and continued the funding of the project until we got the international or private even funding with our JV with KEPCO, and we've got private money. We created a bankable deal that got financed by, by even private banks. When Fukushima happened, I remember I was in, abroad, outside the country, and I, got a call from a senior person from the government asking me, what's happening. So I immediately picked up the phone, called my colleagues in Wano, and immediately got, the feedback of live, feedback of what's happening, a very transparent and very open manner. So I looked at my team and I told them, this has happened immediately. Can we check about the public in the UAE and what's the perspective? Then we checked in the Arab world and in the Arabic language, if you go on Google search at that time, 2011, if you go on Google search nuclear energy or nuclear, whatever, just nuclear, it's all about, not civilian use of nuclear, about bombs, and all the war happening and all that. So we said, okay, that's an opportunity for us. Why don't we go and translate, the whatever available, the facts and the science, and everybody is interested to listen and to hear. And we put that, for the public. I was in the same, a couple of days later, I was on TV, talking about the hard and scientific facts of radiation and how radiation travels and all that. And we got a lot of attention from the Arab world, by the way, not just the UAE audience. And that's what, to Mr. Kim's point, we went from 68, 67% and 70% of public acceptance to around 82 when Fukushima happened. Because we went, and we saw this as an opportunity to educate the public. But with nuclear technology, we cannot sit back and we say, public is not accepting it, and we don't have an option. I'll give you another thing happened recently, about the Netflix. They published a new, HBO published a new documentary, not documentary, actually, movie. And that, by the way, from a public viewership, is more than Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is one of the most popular, TV shows. This is like did beat Game of Thrones from a viewership, and has a lot of myths and non-fact based, stories about what happened in Chernobyl, which is completely non-fact based. So that needs, the public education or our responsibility to educate the public about the facts and the science behind nuclear technology. As I said earlier, it's a safe, clean, reliable source of energy that produces abundant source of energy. And, and my colleagues here, they've enjoyed that in their countries by providing clean, reliable electricity. My colleague in France, they've enjoyed the challenge of policy from some neighboring countries to sell more energy, to their neighbors with a higher premium and also clean source of energy. So there is an opportunity in the nuclear technology. It has to be part of the solution because it is a tested and a proven solution.
Thank you very much. I think that leads immediately over to Mr. Kim, because you mentioned him. So now he is, I will address the question. Because we see that public acceptance, because I now hang on to that for a little while. I go to other topics soon, but public acceptance. Around the world, we see that in most countries, there is a support for nuclear energy, nearly everywhere. And also, the closer you go to nuclear power plant, the more and more supportive people are, because they are familiar with the nuclear plant, they have people working there, they may be their friends and their families. So it's very, very, very few countries around the world where you have a negative opinion around nuclear. But then sometimes things happen and become large in the media debate. Maybe not in people's mind, but maybe just in media. And how to deal with this, because we want to explain and the benefits of nuclear. We would like to talk about how it really serves the society. And sometimes it's really hard for the nuclear industry to talk to policymakers. And you're coming from the government. What should the industry and the sector do to be able to reach with facts and information and to make the government be able to be consistent, as Mr. Hammadi talks about, so the government is not shaken by things happening? How can we support?
Well, we face one obstacle which couldn't be very easily overcome in the country, where nuclear power plants are being concentrated in, several small areas where we oftentimes suffer from earthquakes. Therefore, Some people are very much concerned about the safety of these plants. Of course, for the past many years, we've been operating these plants in very successful way, in a very safe way, without any, troubles up to this point of time. But earthquake is causing some concerns over the resident in that specific area. So in terms of, say, nuclear density, a number of people living in within 30 kilometers of these complexes, a huge number are there. Korea should be regarded as, highest density nuclear plant around the world. So that is one concern people have. And particularly after Fukushima, as many of the panelists have already mentioned, people have become much more concerned about safety than before. But now climate change is drawing much attention around the world. It is my perception that a growing number of people are rethinking about the future of our nuclear business. And so based on the current long-term plan, and last year, nuclear accounted for 30% of power supply in the country, quite huge, with 25 units in operation, and 4 are under construction as of now. By year 2030, nuclear will account for 24%, which is quite high. Of course, that's going to be a decrease from 30% down to 24%. I think we people in the business as well as the government should try to talk to the people as to the future of this business. And for sure, in the country, the size of the country is quite small, although we are trying to build more renewables. But the land cost is very, very high, constituting 13% of the cost of our solar PV plants. And so nuclear will remain important source of our power in year 2030, when we are going to increase renewable portion from the current 6% to 20%. And coal-fired is going to be substantially reduced by that time.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move on now to Mr. Komarov, because how can we collaborate and how can we move so that we have an experienced regulator in one country could support another newcomer country, or how can we make it the step in for a newcomer country more easy? What can the industry do? What can the regulator do? In which way do you see that we can speed up getting more countries coming on?
Thank you very much. It's a very good and very important question, because you can come as a professional vendor of technology, as a professional EPC contractor, and create a plant, but without a lot of things inside the country, it will be impossible to commission the plant and to establish a safe and reliable operation of the plant. And I think the only one way is, Xavier told today that we have the biggest headache of nuclear, it's it's too long-term story, because long-term doesn't mean bad. Long-term means stable and living for centuries. At the same time, if we need to realize investment project, definitely the more longer it is, the more high is the final price of electricity. That's why a lot of things, from my point of view, should be done in parallel. And it's, it should be a common plan of vendor of technology and customer of the plant, how not only to construct a nuclear power plant, but to create the whole environment What kind of legislation changes should be done in the country? Should be recommendation from vendor and from national regulator of vendor's country as well. How people should be educated and prepared. What does it mean to train staff? How to organize this whole process? Because if you need to have people with high education, you need to start this process beyond, very far beyond the commissioning date. Because you, first of all, you need to select good school children, to prepare them well in physics and mathematics, to give them a good high education. And what we are doing in Russia today we have approximately more than 1,500 foreign students studying nuclear discipline in different universities. And it's only one way to do it, plus definitely they cannot have only a broad education. A big work should be done by the national universities who are able to give such education. The same story about regulatory work, because very often we have now a lot of newcomer countries where Rosatom is working. It's Bangladesh, it's Turkey, it's Belarus, it's Uzbekistan. All these countries are newcomers. But believe me, even experienced countries like Hungary, if they constructed last plant 40 years ago, believe me, from existing point of view, it's very equal to do not have anything new in nuclear, because since 40 years ago, so many things have changed, and if people do not have a practice, it's also a big challenge for a country how to adapt a modern technology and how to realize such a big project. That's why I think the plan how to create a whole nuclear infrastructure, including legislation, experienced regulator, enough quantity of experienced people to be able to operate the plant, such a plan has the same importance like a plan to construct nuclear power plant itself. And yes, it's possible to do it in parallel, but it's very important to think about it in parallel. And our experience demonstrates us that it's possible to do this. And it's possible if you start in a proper time period. It's possible to prepare people and to establish not just good construction, but good operation as well.
Thank you very much for those remarks and your experience. Mr. Gu, I'm thinking now, you talked also about the things a little bit changing in your country, but is there a way that all the experience you already have from all your operations of nuclear, you are the one building so many reactors, how can those organizations help to work together with also government to even further improve education in the system? Because we see that education is also key to public acceptance, is key to have I think you probably have one of the youngest work fleets, young people, compared to some of the other countries. But how do you keep people motivated? How do you make them feel that this is key for a clean future?
For the education of the people in this industry, there's no problem for them to understand the nuclear power is important. It's also very important in China. We change the energy structures and for reducing the coal-fired plant. But for education to as Mr. Rosatom mentioned, we have more than 40 units. They have nuclear discipline in their universities. So normally we have more than 2,000 people a year for the graduates, university graduates, to join the industry. But also in sometimes we are still short of manpower for these young people. But as you know, China is a large population, a country with a large population. As a former panelist mentioned, nuclear energy is a kind of a mysterious energy. You cannot feel as a wind, as a solar, as a hydropower. So sometimes it's very difficult to try to persuade those who convince them the safety. Yeah. especially after the 3 accidents, especially the Fukushima accident. They don't like to listen to your scientific analysis, but so we need to find a way, a more simple way and a more useful or more life kind of a way to teach people to understand the nuclear energy. Another area I think is important. Now the safety is based on the probabilistic analysis, 10 minus 6 minus 7, but people, they don't accept this kind of idea. What happened to me, that's just 100%. So the innovation of the technology for nuclear industry is, I think, a driver for the future. It's necessary for the industry to keep on the new technology innovation. And now in China, we cooperate with other countries all over the world to develop the new generation of a nuclear power plant that has high temperature gas cooled and fast breed, and even we are joining ITER, International ITER organization, try to use a fusion in the future. So through a different kind of a way, I think it's a good way for the industry to keep forward, to let people understand the safety, let people understand the industry, let people accept this industry. It will take I think it's not a simple work, but take time to persuade people, persuade even the government officials. I think it's more important in China. Let them understand the nuclear energy. They are decision makers, so it's very important to government, different level of government officials to understand understand the industry.
The opportunity today, for because these power plants and this energy and policies, we are not for us. This is for our children, specifically for nuclear, because it's going to operate for the next 60 years. I would like to share a story, if you don't mind. My daughter, she's 17 years old. She just finished high school and she's going to university, and she want to create a difference in the world. That's what she came to me and said, so what's your job building nuclear power plants? Is it safe? Is it, what value? So I've asked her, 2 questions. Question number 1, what do you think about the future when it comes to electricity use? She said, I have no idea. You are the electrical engineer. You tell me, father. I told him, how many gadgets do you use? You have an iPad, she has an iPhone, and she has a laptop. And all these are consuming electricity on a daily basis. So if we add all this, with the billion people in the world, they will start using this down the road, from an electricity point of view. This means electrification or electricity will be more and more of use in the world. So imagine a solution that can provide that, but in a clean and abundant source of energy. He said, what do you mean? I told him, that's what your father is doing. I'm working on a project that will eliminate 20 million tons of CO2 emissions on an annual basis. He said that's even a greater solution than what he was thinking about, of not buying plastic bags or, and that was her mission in life. He said, your mission in life is much more bigger than mine. I want to be part of this kind of solutions, to provide a major impact on the world. And nuclear technology has been doing this for decades, for the past decades. And the 2 opportunities I see, there is electrification happening and more demand for electricity than anything else in the world. Second, we have a young generation who is very interested to save the world and and create sustainability and create a safer, a better world for them to live in and for their children also to live in. So that's why those 2 opportunities, I see them as as a golden opportunities for our technology to be marketed and to be put in the right positioning for the younger generation. And because they are the future, sooner or later, they will be in these chairs talking about the future and trying to find solutions. And when it comes to technology, nuclear is the solution, has been there and will be there for decades to come.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that good one. Very short,
for-
because now I soon open to the floor. Yeah?
Okay. For the future of a nuclear power, it also depends on the young people. It's very important to get young people to join this industry. But if young people don't like to join this industry, the industry will be no future. So for when we judge whether this industry is have a good future or not, it depends on whether we can get a lot of young people to participate in the industry. If young people don't like to come, that will be a difficult problem. Yeah.
No, we absolutely have a task. An important mission is to attract the young people. And I do believe when we get young people coming, they really are engaged and they like to stay and they sort of love nuclear energy once. But if they don't know about it, how can you start loving it? So we have to make this first step and make people very interested. I'd like to go to Mr. Rosatom. I am opening to the floor after this answer, but this is now, you will get a very tough question, because you're coming from a country that you have easily over the years had 80% nuclear in your country. You have had totally sustainable energy because you have no emissions. And you did that like in a 20-year period. You were able to take away all coal, all oil and gas, and that enormous growth in electricity demand was all made by making more and more nuclear. And if now we have so many countries around the world, they have pledged to reduce their CO2 emissions. Is there a way we can advise these countries on the role nuclear could and should play in their countries? Can we work together to give governments in these countries some advice? What would you say?
I would say that it's difficult to give advice to governments because it's a difficult task to be in a government anyway. And because also it's a decision of each country. It's a very strategic decision, and it's a decision that we need to respect as being the decision of each country. But what we learned in France, but in many countries, but in France, if I take this example in the 80s, is that when we really want to fight, we can. You know, in France, at the time being, during the 70s and the 80s, the question was not the climate at this time. But the question was that we were highly dependent on gas, oil, and we have no gas, no oil in France. And it was really difficult for us to explain to the French people that we were highly dependent on what was going on abroad for the simple need we have to everyday electricity. So the government decided to launch a first batch of 34 reactors, and then a second batch of 20 reactors, and we commissioned 54 reactors in 15 years' time, up to 1 year. It was not an easy task, but it was a necessity. So I think that if we look at the decarbonization of economy as a necessity and not an issue, not a wish, not something we would like to achieve, but if we look at it as a necessity, we get part of the answer.
Thank you very much. That's really great. Now, I hope you are prepared in the audience and have some burning questions, because now is the chance to raise a question to anyone in the panel. We have one in the front here and one there. So can we have the mics rolling and then one there? We will see how many. We can probably only take 2 or 3 questions. No, he was first. We have to take it in order. Who's first here?
Good afternoon.
Yes. Please tell where you're coming from, your name and your...
Yes, no. I'm Sandro Clerici. I am coming from Italy. It's not a nice country for nuclear. It's impossible even to mention the word nuclear. Just, I have been twice chairman of some work task forces on nuclear. One, revamping a new renaissance in Europe. This was before Fukushima, and the second one was nuclear after Fukushima. Just I have a small comment and a specific question.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the 5 key issues for nuclear development, as has been said, the first is public acceptance. And the second, in my opinion, that is big also, is final waste dismantling. The other is just the liabilities for a possible disasters. How much are placed and who is going to pay for that? The third one, the fourth one is cost. And we have difference of 1 to 3 from China to, I don't mention the cost of Hinkley Point that is giving 115 just pounds per megawatt hour of incentives to be produced. But the question is relevant to last point, modulation. With the big expansion of renewables, it's very important to have the possibility of modulation just to go very low in the minimum power you can accept and in the ramping. I give you an example. In Italy, at sunset now, we have a ramp of 20 gigawatt in 2.5 hours when the sun is going out. And before, you have to have the minimum production from the conventional plants. So what is the state of art of the nuclear plants with the problem of modulation and RES plus nuclear? Because in my opinion, it's very important, this problem. I know in France they have done a lot of problem for modulation, but I would like to see on the market what is possible to have.
Thank you very much. I think with your questions, we can have a full new session. So, and we cannot do that. So I think it's good that we agree. We only go on the last one. We are talking about the cost. I think we should talk about the system. Yes, but also the modulation has a cost. But I think there is someone who would like to answer this question here. Mr. Rosatom.
Only one word. In France, it's already the case, in fact. And nearly all the fleet, in fact, it's the fleet minus 5 or 6 reactors. They can modulate their capacity and go from their total capacity down to the minimal capacity in half an hour and then up to the total capacity. The minimum capacity depends, but for 900 megawatt reactor, it's around 300 megawatts. It's 30%. So it means we can go down to 30% in half an hour. And the second answer is that the new generation of EPR we are studying for France. We study them to be in a fleet with renewable side. It means that we studied what are the modulation in the sun power, in the wind power in Western Europe, and we designed the reactor to be able to follow the curve. Yeah. The curve, yeah, exactly. In half an hour.
Yes.
If
short
I may,
comment here. Yeah.
Yes, if I may add a short comment, I fully confirm that from technological point of view, definitely everything is possible. But my opinion that we should be logistic. Nuclear, first of all, should satisfy base load needs.
Yeah, sure.
And if you talk about some peak consumption, yes, it's a very good area for gas. It's a good area for renewables. And if we want to create an economically wise model, we should try with assistance of national energy operator to put everything in the right place. Because even if it is possible from economical point of view, you should think as well what is more beneficial from economical point of view.
Fully agree. I was answering on the technological part, and it's highly
But
possible.
I agree from technological side, everything is possible, and we, Russia, have the same opportunity with our VVR technologies.
Thank you very much. I promised one question here. Do we have a mic here as well? Is the microphone on its way? Thank you. And when you're sort of preparing for the question, I wanted to come with a comment that I think France is one of the countries in Europe with the cheapest electricity. I think one question that we did not have up there is to talk about reliability, because what people want, they want electricity 24/7, independent of weather and seasons, and that is also driving force for the society, the modern society. Please come with your question. and then we shall be very, very short.
My name is Venku Stoev, and I'm coming from small Bulgaria, but we already have 45 years of nuclear experience, and my question is to a representative of the vendors. What's your vision about small model nuclear reactors, and do you planning to expand the investments? Are they the future of nuclear energy sector?
So thank you for the question. And I think in fact, we have 4 vendors here, and they get half a minute each. So I'm very, very fair now. Who like to start?
I would say we are increasing our investment, all of us, I guess. And my feeling is that SMR will be one future of nuclear, but not the future of nuclear. That will need SMR plus probably mid and high power reactor at the same time. But we are increasing our investment, and I think it's true in many country vendors.
Yeah. Mr. Kim, would you like to comment?
Korea is also investing in SMR and in other major fourth generation technologies as well.
Thank you. Mr. Gu, would you like to comment?
Yeah, we are going to start building a small modular reactor next year. So we put a lot of our research on the new technologies.
Thank you. Mr. Komarov, before you answer, you will have a final remark, and less than 1 minute, please. But first, your answer.
Being very proud that we are not only investing, we already have a first SMR in the world, and it's now on the way to his final place, I mean floating nuclear power plant. But I fully agree with Mr. Sa that it's not the whole future of nuclear energy, because I believe that SMR are very special type of reactors. They are very good in some specific logic, but it should be such a specific logic, like no grid connection or some specific temperature and territory conditions, like some faraway regions like that, or regions with already very high tariffs for electricity. Or I had now an example, very interesting one, when people creating a big mining project, and they have a financial model of electricity, of the cost of electricity and the cost of these materials, and they want to be predictable, they want to be stable. That's why they want not just buy electricity from the market on existing price, but they want to be 100% sure that during the whole life cycle of this mining project, they will have a predictable price for electricity. That's why maybe they are ready to SMR, but nevertheless SMR will be more expensive than centralized grid-connected nuclear energy.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have no more time for the audience questions, but I would like to give each one of the panelists a short final remark to whatever topic you like to bring now. Who likes to start?
Maybe this way.
This way?
No, starting from Mr. Hammadi and
Anyway,
Either way will be okay.
So you know, the future is, you know, is clear for electrification. You know, I think everybody agrees on that. Electricity consumption will grow, you know, per individuals, per, you know, as for the whole world. And electricity is required. And when I say when we need a cleaner source of energy, the current technology we are building here in the UAE, you know, in Baraka, is a proven technology. It's a safe and reliable technology. And we need to take an action, an immediate action, throughout the world to provide a safe, clean, and reliable source of energy. And my colleagues talked about the reliability of electricity, and because of the grid, and that's a complex system to manage. Second, on the clean source of energy and proven source of energy is nuclear. You know, kind of also scores that check mark. But the important thing also, a diversified portfolios of energy, because there's no solution fits everybody. And that's something need to be part of the equation when making any energy policies that the government or the nations has to stick to for decades to create a sustainable and a reliable sector. So that's from my side. And the young generation, we need to invest in them from today, from understanding the options that are available for them, so they can make the right choice and continue that right choice for decades to come and for generations to come.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hammadi. Mr. Gu?
Nuclear energy is clean and reliable energy, not only for China, it's also important for the world. For more than 30 years experience on continuous construction of a nuclear power plant, we have already formed a very strong team in design, constructing and operating the nuclear power plant. We also have experience with a different kind of technology with the different regulators, because in China, you know, we have Russia technology, French technology, we have United States technology, we also have Canadian CANDU 2 units, and also we have our own technology from 300, 600, and also to the Hualong, more than 1,000 megawatt new generation 3 plant. Also, we are now developing the small SMR, small modular reactor, and also generation 4 type of reactor, HTR, and also breeder, fast breeder, and also something to, floating. So we like to share our experience. We like to cooperate with all of the world to make a contribution to any newcomer to build a nuclear. They have a nuclear program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gu. Mr. Kim?
Yes. Well, issues on climate change, well, particularly below 2-degree target as set forth at COP21, in my view, have not been adequately, successfully addressed so far up to this point of time. Therefore, as time goes by, I think climate change issues are going to draw more attention. Therefore, I foresee that there are going to be growing opportunities for both nuclear and renewables. And we are going to compete head-to-head with renewables. If they are going to be equipped with much less costly, efficient, and energy storage systems, then that's going to be a real big fight. Therefore, our future will depend very much on whether we could develop fourth-generation technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rosatom?
Thank you. For me, I would say that I really think we are at a new dawn for nuclear. The fight against climate change is in front of us. We really need all energies to fight against it, and nuclear plus renewable is a winning couple, I think, for that. We need to decarbonize our economies. We need to do it strongly and quickly. The second point is that nuclear is an industry, it's not an ideology. And most of the time in the public debate, in the media field, in the political field, we are dealing with nuclear as if it was a religion or an ideology. It's an industry. And we have to explain this is an industry. We have to explain how it relies on people, how it made tremendous gaps in the way safety is taken in charge. And we need to show people working in nuclear. This would be the visage, the face of nuclear. Nuclear needs to have visible face and not being anymore this mysterious energy that you don't know how it is produced. And if all those ingredients, I would say, are put in the recipe, I'm quite sure we are at a new dawn for nuclear.
Thank you very much. Mr. Komarov, few last sentences.
You know, for me, the most important is that people today, everywhere in the world, are thinking not only about necessity of electricity, but finally they started to think what kind of electricity they receive. And definitely in a situation with climate change, the role of nuclear is very clear. Without our presence, without our development, we cannot achieve climate change goals. That's why I think the most important is today to raise the voice of nuclear industry. And I'm really happy that today on World Energy Council we have here on this stage the representatives of the majority of biggest nuclear industries. I fully agree with Mr. Xavier. Industries in our countries, in France, in Korea, in China, in Russia. and being not just representative of Rosatom, but like a chairman of World Nuclear Association, I'm very happy that here on World Energy Council we can provide our position, we can promote our position and try to convince people that what we are doing is a future of people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you all panelists. So we have, in fact, gone through a lot of questions and a lot of challenges and looked to how important they are. And we see, in fact, clearly how the role of nuclear is changing. We see more and more intergovernmental organizations, important key organizations mentioning nuclear as part of the future. Some of the organizations are even saying there is no sustainable energy future in the absence of nuclear energy. So we see this dialogue and conversation changing. We see it now changing into reports. It's now becoming clearer and clearer how important it is for a stable electricity system to have nuclear. We see the exceptional role that nuclear energy have because they give services not only by bringing electricity, but to the electricity system and to the health and to the environment for people. So it has a large role. It's not been seen, it's not been valued for that extremely large role. And this is now starting to come. And we are part of this. I see nuclear energy as very smart, very dynamic, and absolutely essential for a clean energy future. Now I'd like to bring this session to a close by asking you all to join me in thanking the panelists who have done a tremendous job today for us. Thank you.